Good evening, everyone, and I also want to thank the OMDC for tonight, and particularly the jury in my category, which is a very eclectic category. It's got two fiction, 2 short stories, poetry, and my nonfiction book, so bravo to the jury. I'm always asked, what the heck is this book Brown about? So I've decided in the next 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes to read the section that actually explains what this book is about. I propose that we think of brown as a continuum, a grouping, a metaphor even, for the millions of darker-skinned people who have missed out on the economic and political gains of the post-industrial world and are now clamoring for their share of social mobility, equality, and freedom. Past colonial powers must now resolve the paradox of having former subjects living among them, transforming themselves from nameless individuals with swarthy skins into neighbors, co-workers, and friends. Brown is the color of the 5 million Muslims in France, most of whom come from the former North African French colonies. Brown is the color of the Pakistani and Indian immigrants to the United Kingdom, who arrived as the Raj gave way to post-partition chaos and violence. Brown is the color of the uprisings that have taken over the Arab world in the first half of this decade. It's the color of hundreds of thousands of Egyptians saying enough to a life of poverty and political oppression. Most of their revolutions have been usurped, silenced, or devastated by ruling parties and widening ethnic tensions, but their idealism lives on. Brown is yet another Mediterranean ghost ship carrying hundreds of Syrian and North African asylum seekers who were faced with the choice, stay put or possibly perishing en route, and still chose the latter. Brown represents hundreds of Nepalese, Indian, and Bangladeshi construction workers dying daily, literally an average of 1 a day, to build arenas and infrastructure for Qatar 2022 World Cup. Brown is the thousands of Latin children smuggled by their own parents or traveling alone across the US-Mexico border in hope of finding a life away from drug wars, marauding militias, and extreme poverty. We're not a distinct ethnic group, but large ones with more in common than we have acknowledged before. Eugenicists have been kept up all night worrying about our birth rates and concocting ways to sterilize our fecund kind before we contaminate the purity and beauty of white people. Our stories and histories have spread worldwide, and we've created diasporic communities to protect and showcase our heritage, and most of all, our food. Everybody loves our food. Biryani rice, falafel, couscous, tacos, and in many ways we're identified with what we prepare in our kitchens or serve others in our so-called ethnic restaurants. Our bodies too are sometimes consumed as a slice of exotica or sexual adventurism, a tradition that has existed in bafflingly perfect harmony with our supposed physical inferiority since the heyday of racialist science. For much of our history, we've been defined by others, but the time has come for us to self-identify as we wish. There's strength in numbers and comfort in knowing that one's experience is not isolated or an aberration. Whenever I get pulled aside when crossing the US border, which happens quite frequently, of course, I find it reassuring that I'm not the only brown face. I see the Iraqi or Pakistani business traveler, the Colombian student, the Sri Lankan chef, or the Indian family with 3, 4, 5 children. And I know that while our stories are different, we find ourselves singled out because of our brown skins and histories. We don't talk to each other, but we do exchange knowing glances. It's our lot as brown people to be treated with suspicion when we cross borders. Thank you so much.